Hi there, Glocal Citizens. Welcome back to the podcast that inspires a borderless mindset around manifesting a new world. I'm your host, Florence Adu, and this is part 2 of my conversation with Nyamal Tutdeal. She is a former refugee from South Sudan who resettled in the United States with her family. She has worked with various immigrants, migrants, refugees, indigenous communities, and women groups, both domestically and internationally. She is a notable international speaker and an advocate for displaced communities. Her advocacy work took her to the White House during the Obama administration. She has hosted cultural events and facilitates dialogue on conflict resolution, anti-racist race relations, and peace building. She's also a mediator and teaches mediation, conflict coaching, restorative justice, and conflict transformation. Nyamal is also co-founder and executive director of the Nyamal Foundation, as well as an adjunct professor at Arcadia University and director of equity and inclusion for Cora Services, a not-for-profit in Pennsylvania. She has served as the policy director for Pennsylvania Immigration and Citizenship Coalitions, a nonprofit working on immigrants and refugee issues, and currently sits on the board. She holds a BA in Human Relations and a Master's in International Peace and Conflict Resolution. And she's also working on her PhD from Nova Southeastern University, and that PhD is going to be in conflict analysis and resolution. So in this episode, we learn a lot about her work in that space, conflict resolution, and also about her foundation. So let's pick up the conversation and learn more about Nyamal. Okay, so let's talk about you being in Sioux Falls and your work with the native peoples of indigenous peoples of the United States.
Oh, that work is life-changing. Mm-hmm. It's a chapter in my life that I'm truly thankful for and truly humble for, that I was welcome to learn, not only learn, but be really welcome. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was stepping back into my own self of being an indigenous woman, an indigenous African woman in the West. So growing up in South Dakota, I had worked with Everest youth. Mm-hmm. And one of the earliest memories I remember is that one of the youth came in and he was going through a whole bunch of stuff. And it was like he wasn't talking or anything of that nature. And then I was like, oh, my grandmother makes some really phenomenal tongue soup. He was like, tongue? I was like, yes, my people, we use all parts of the cow.
Yeah.
He was like, we do it with the bison. He's like, my grandmother makes some tongue soup. So that was it. That's how I was able to open a conversation with this child.
Sure.
And then I took Intro to Native American Studies. Mm-hmm. We had to do a presentation. I felt sorry for my white classmate because I literally ran home 2 hours before class. I picked up the gourd work, the bead work that my aunt has on her wall. I put a cute little PowerPoint presentation together, the hut and the teepee and our beadwork, and came and showed, like, this is what we do and how similar it is to Native culture. Sure. My classmate had to do all these research and all of that. I'm just like,
I
got this, yeah. And so not until I moved to Nebraska, when I was doing my undergrad, that I got a chance to work for the Ponca tribe of Nebraska. Okay. And in that role, I was researching and reteaching culture to Ponca youth. And many of my youth were Ponca, Omaha, Ponca, Hispanic, Ponca, African American. So they were from different indigenous communities. Mm-hmm. And it was an evidence-based program called Project Venture. Mm-hmm. So I had a whole week training in New Mexico. Mm-hmm. And it was the first time in my life, in my professional life, at a training that I did not feel othered. Mm-hmm. It was just like, I was with indigenous people. Like, it was just like I was at home. Our humor was similar because, again, it's humor coming from trauma, right? Yeah. They survived genocide. Yeah. They're still surviving genocide. Right. We're dealing with the effect of colonization and white supremacy in the U.S. So for me, it was just like, oh my gosh, like I could just breathe.
Story,
we could just all exhale and breathe together. Right. And so for me, this work was, I had to sit at the foot of their elders because I know that I was researching from a secondary source when the first primary source were there. And so it was, going to powwows and having my youth go on hiking and learn trees and plants from the elders of what they can use for medicine and for eating and so forth. It was just, I didn't feel like I was working. Working with an indigenous tribe and working for corporate America was two different things. Like I would show up in the morning. It was very collective. We would show up in the morning. Everybody's having, their coffee and just checking in with everybody. Okay, what's going on in the youth department? What do y'all need help with? And for us, it's like, if we don't have a busy day, it's like, all right, transportation. Are you guys okay? Do you guys need an extra hand? Or our social services? Or, our domestic violence? It's like, all right, is a mother needing, do you need to deal with a mother? Can we deal with the children? Do elders need to be taken here and there? It's very collective. Nobody ever says,
oh, you do your thing.
Yeah, it's not in my job description. It was never that. It's very collective. Like, what are we doing for the betterment of our community?
So how do you think that was able to evolve in that way? As a program, was it the people? Like, what was the dynamic that facilitated that being the workplace that you were in?
It's the people, and it's their life, right? So I remember speaking with your sister, she's telling me that, the Pankas are also in Oklahoma.
Yes.
Where the Pankas that are in Nebraska and a little bit of South Dakota and Iowa, there may be 3,000 of them. So it's like a family, like, this is us, we have to keep us going.
Yeah.
But all indigenous communities, I have sisters that are Sioux, that are Omaha. It's like, when it comes to geography and their population, there's not many of them, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, we have to stick together to survive.
Right.
What is left of us.
Sure.
So it's
so
just,
that was part of the motivation in creating this space that everyone is welcome to be, and I guess
it's providing
collaborate.
services. It's providing services for us, by us, for us.
Okay.
Right? Where, because the tribe that I work for, we don't have a reservation, so it's different, right? We're urban. We're urban tribe, so it's very difficult for our communities to get services. So the community now is like, all right, where are the needs and how can we fulfill them?
Okay.
That was the biggest thing.
Yeah, so
that was the biggest thing.
Okay,
now, if we had a reservation, it would have been something different.
Got it.
But since we were an urban,
got it.
Even like the land that we worked on, it's federal, right? So we had to contract with the city. So if anything happens on our land, they could come in because they could come in and help us with it, or else it would have to be federal officers that come in.
Okay, so that's the whole other dynamic.
Okay, because it's
land rights issues and everything.
Yeah, it's a sovereign state.
Yeah.
Dealing with another sovereign state. So
wow.
Listen, I love working for that. Like, and in the morning you would sage. I learned that I had to take care of my mental health. And even when I went back to Ethiopia in 2014 to take my grandmother back, when she transitioned, actually the day that I was leaving, she transitioned in the afternoon and I left in the evening. And when I came back, I let them know. They were like, all right, take a week. Grieve. And I was like, no, I need to be here.
Yeah.
And I remember I fully went into my grieving process of cutting my hair a year later. And so I showed up to work. I used to have long locks.
Okay.
I showed up to work one Monday, bald-headed, shiny. Nobody asked me any question.
Yeah,
it was just
knew
like,
it.
we understood. We knew it. As a matter of fact, some of the elders were like, we were wondering when you were going to do it.
Oh.
Yeah, because they
that's
cut,
a ritual.
they cut their hair too.
Yes.
They don't go completely bald. They cut their hair because hair is sacred in many of the
exactly.
Native communities.
Exactly.
So it was like, when were you going to do it? So it was.
Yeah.
But then when I'm walking around in other communities, I'm like, God, do you have cancer? It's like.
Oh wow!
So,
yeah.
The lack of cultural humility.
Yes. Right. Wow. Well, that's an awesome story, and I think we're on the heels of what was celebrated the now Indigenous Peoples Days. So, and that we went on a journey together on that day. So it's just really interesting to get that perspective and to learn a little bit more. So in the show notes again, folks, we'll talk a little bit more about the Indigenous tribes that Nyamal worked with in the U.S. So let's move into your foundation. Yes. So you are also a little bit of an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
So what had happened again was there's a lot of what happened.
Yeah.
So with the Nyamal Foundation, it started off as an idea between my co-founder and I, Tutdeal, phenomenal model. She's a phenomenal actress as well.
Okay.
She started in The Good Lie, which was a movie about the lost boys and lost girls of Sudan then, now South Sudan. Yeah, but she's a phenomenal model, also an entrepreneur. Shea butter business called Janubi, like that's why my skin.
Oh yeah, yes. We tried some.
Yeah,
okay.
Janubi. So so basically with Janubi, that's also one of our project, our entrepreneurial project. Some of the proceeds go to the Nyamal Foundation.
Okay. Yeah.
So basically, we actually literally when South Sudan went into war in 2013, we felt very helpless. It was like late nights. Thinking about, all right, what are we gonna do? What can we do? The feeling helplessness. We started brainstorming. We're like, of course, we were brainstorming from a Eurocentric mindset. We're like, we should do a broad drive. We're like, no, we checked ourselves really quick.
Fast, yeah.
We're like, wait, the fuck? A broad drive? Like, really? We're like, all right, European mindset.
Yeah.
But then we started having a conversation of, when I went home in 2014 to take our grandmother, I went as an American woman. I had my tampons, I had my pads, and I was like, yay. And then I had a conversation with family members, and I had a conversation with, young women in the community. Like, what happened when you get your period?
They stay home.
They stay home. Or they use old rags.
Yep.
If they don't have the resources to buy.
Yep.
And so when I came back, we started having conversation. We're like, okay, let's do something. And for me, I'm like, I'm so thankful that I got my period in the U.S.
Yes. Yeah.
So thankful.
Yeah.
Because not only you getting your period, not having access, but then also the shame.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's so devastating, and it's interesting that we have that in common. So I started an initiative with a few girlfriends. It's called Flirt with the World. And so it's about helping women and young girls to claim their reproductive empowerment. And so we started with, it's December. It's wow, it's almost 10 years now that we had our first major activation here in Accra. It was on World AIDS Day, and we started a 1 million condom giveaway. And so
we've been giving condoms away too.
Yes. And one of our big pushes was the female condom.
Yep.
Because we created a film and we submitted it and was a finalist in a competition. But the female condom we found the opposition that we got to giving it, right?
What?
I mean, quietly, it's so interesting.
Yeah.
So we went to the places, hotspots. We did a beach drive, we did a community drive, we did one where it's called Tiptoe Lane, which is where most of the women who work at night, prostitution is. And so quietly people took. Yeah. They would say, I don't want it, but then quietly they would take. We had packages, but they didn't. They were kind of like, this female one, I don't know, how can I use it? Yeah, but then that also enlightened us to the fact that young girls don't have access to. So then we moved on to do some work around the cup. Yes. And so we did a drive, and that was in Kenya with the menstrual cup. But the key thing that is it's not surprising, but that we know now is that I think the major manufacturers are part of the culprit. Yep. They are providing substandard products in Africa, and then it's so expensive for no reason. So it's huge, and it's not just Africa; it's most developing world, South America,
even in Philly, where I live, we have period poverty.
Yes. Where young girls stay home. It really impacts them. And then, then culturally, I can't down people's culture, but cultures that really, I want to say dog women when they're, you can't come out, you can't be seen by people.
You're unclean.
You're unclean. It's just heartbreaking. And so tell us more about the work that you...
Oh, man, it's everything that you said, right? For us, we were doing a lot of advocacy work. So before we even really come to fruition, after we just really got a name for our organization and so forth, I had an opportunity to present at a panel hosted by Representative Karen Bass for the Lost Boys and Lost Girls of Sudan. And I was on there talking about the Nyamal Foundation and talking about periods, right? And it was interesting. A lot of the South Sudanese men were like, Nyamal, we knew you were crazy, but we did not know you were this crazy. to talk about periods on Capitol Hill when Representative such and such, when Congresswoman such and such is on here. And I remember it was like literally everybody was like, oh, it was like an enlightenment thing where people, I'm like, you guys do not think about when women are in movement, regardless whether it's climate war, whether it's climate displacement now, or it's war, or it's urban, right, poverty. Y'all don't think about even homelessness.
Exactly.
You do not think about what happens when we get a period.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
And that is something that we have to worry about.
Yeah.
I remember one of the young men, he was like, yo, he was like, yo, I didn't know you were that crazy. I was like, listen, you're here because your mom missed a period.
Thank you.
Okay?
Yeah.
You're here because your mom missed a period, a whole period. That's why you're here.
Yeah.
And he was just kind of like, oh, wow. And so one of the things that he came back a month later and said, thank you.
Right.
I said, thank you for what he said, for what you said and what you did. Because now I'm sending a little bit of extra money to my sister and her daughters, so that they can get those.
It.
Yeah,
that's
I was
awesome.
like,
yes, the point taken.
I'm like, at least one person, you know, that came back to me. But how many minds could we change?
Sure,
you know, because this is not just our burden; it's a family burden.
Yeah, it really is.
It's a whole family burden.
It really
so
is. Yeah,
we did our first trip. Our first trip to Ethiopia in 2019.
Okay.
We went and then lockdown happened, like, you know, in the first couple of months because we were planning on going to South Sudan as well.
Sure.
So this was basically like a need assessment for us as an organization going. So myself and Mana Joak, that's our nurse. She came with our reproductive health and I came with a peacebuilding piece.
Sure.
Where the Gambela region that we went to, there's conflict still also in the Gambela region.
Okay.
And often it's predominantly between the Nuer and the Anuak ethnic groups. But then there's also 3 more other ethnic groups in the community.
Okay.
So.
And what is is the basis of that just resources?
It's resources.
Yeah.
I blame African men for a lot of conflict that happened. Well, okay, African men, are y'all listening?
Yeah.
I blame a few of y'all, so let's be the solution makers. Yeah, it's different, and different community being pinned against each other. One community is also farmers, the other communities are, you know, herders. So we have that dynamic as well. Political conflict, people being used against each other, ethnicity being used. So one of the things that we did that we were very intentional about is we went back to our very own community with cultural humility.
Okay. Yeah. You said, tell us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Tell us. Even though I speak Nuer,
yeah,
I was born here, but I've been away for 25 years, right? Tell us, but this is what we've brought in you telling us, right? We told them we have menstrual pads, reusable menstrual pads. So when we did our research, many of our communities are still very indigenous. So, you know, the concept of a cup, the concept of a tampon is like, oh no, you are divergening our girls.
Yeah.
So
right. Yeah.
Even prior to that, we did that research before going on the ground. So what really worked was using reusable menstrual pads. So a phenomenal organization called Days for Girls donated 250 pads, reusable pads.
Nice.
So it's basically cloth, and they were all different African print cloth.
So are they belted?
No,
like,
they're
Velcro.
Not Velcro. That it's like the snap.
Snaps. Okay.
Yep. The snap. So basically, in a kit, you had 8 liners and 2 inserts. Okay. And then 2 underwear, 2 washcloth, and then silk.
Oh, nice.
So that's the kits that we went and took. And so we met with a wonderful, wonderful human being. At the time, he was the Human Rights Commissioner. His name is Tuk Philip. Okay. So we met with him, and he gave us the layout of the whole community from the human rights perspective, from community perspective, and then politically also. Yeah. And one of the things that we learned from him is that our population of women in the prison systems are forgotten, and they are in desperate need of them because, again, they are dealing with the stigma of being jailed. Yeah. And often it's them protecting themselves, self-defense. Yeah. So, Yep. So we were like, wow, that is a population we didn't even think about. Right. So, so when we went on the ground, we made sure that he was like, speak to these people, speak to these people, speak to these people. We were able to go to a boarding school that had all of the ethnic groups of young women in the community. It was so phenomenal. They greeted us in all the 5 languages. And the young girl that greeted us in Nuer, or in Tognat, the language that I speak, said something that's so profound that it keeps me on the track, right? And she said, "You came back and you look like me."
Oh, that's
like,
beautiful.
I'm still like, oh my God. Yo, I'm a thug. I sweat from my eyes. But I was sweating. I was like, yo. And for me, it was like, it's something that I intentionally, it's something that I've always wanted to do, is to interrupt that white savior complex, whether it's intentional or not. And the fact that she spoke that, I was like, yeah.
That's
because I could see my young self.
Yes.
Right? Because when we were in the refugee camp, nobody like me came. It was always the white people.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. And so, and I think even when I was going through the becoming of age journey in the U.S., being told you're too dark.
Yeah. Particularly going to a place where there were very few people of color.
And aunties buying me bleaching cream because the bleaching pandemic came to South Sudan a little bit later. But a lot of the girls that I grew up with, many of them succumbed to bleaching because we were combating racism and colorism at the same time. So it was like we were too African for the African American, right? And then we were too African and too black for the white people. So it was so for me it was just like, when she said that, I was like, all right, Black Jesus, I'm gonna need to keep it together.
Wow.
And it's just, and then being able to go to we went also to a refugee camp. We went to Jiwa refugee camp and talked to 200 women there. And one of the things that was also profound for me is that we were also interrupting early childhood marriages.
Good.
So I went back as a 34-year-old woman, unmarried. My cousin was 26. I think Mana was 26, 27. And we're over here like, I was
living
like,
your best life.
I'm like, listen, I'm 34, I'm not married. They started clapping. I'm like, yay! While I go home and they'll be like, where's your husband? Do we need to do a prayer?
Right.
You don't have kids, you know? So we were having conversation with the young girls of really motivating them and encouraging them to choose school regardless of whatever emotional or verbal abuse they get from family because they're not married. These girls were in their 20s, because bride price in my community is very large.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so they would feel like they would be just lost in despair because no one can pay for them.
No, not even that. The family is saying, you're at prime age, you need to get married so we can have that bride price.
So they're pimping them out.
Yeah. Now I joke and say we're our family's retirement plan.
Yes, but actually it's true.
Yeah,
it's true, and it has been throughout time. Throughout time, it's always been that. And I've just finished reading a book, and I hope to I will have the author on the podcast. But men think that a wife's often in these parts that a wife's glory is her husband, marriage, right? And so then they won't really invest in their girls because it's like, why should I invest in her? Because everything she has is going to go to the husband. So why?
Exactly.
So it's really,
And the same thing with the boys. We were really encouraging them to we were talking about condoms. I was talking about sex in Nuer.
Yes.
And they're like,
I know.
Oh my God. They're like this American girl coming in. And so like the word vagina in Nuer, we say mur.
Mur.
Yeah, and it's also in the Dinka language too, because the Dinkas and the Nuer are cousin, even though we're beefing. Right. We're like really serious. And then penis is chul. Mur and chul, right?
Oh, I like that. It's very sing-songy.
Mur and chul, right? And I'm like, oh my God, there was this one Dinka guy. He was trying to pronounce Merlot. He was like, I had this wine that was phenomenal. It's Merlot. I'm like, no. I will never see Merlot the same again.
Right?
Now I see it, I'm like, Merlot.
That's funny.
But we were talking to the young men of just protecting themselves, right?
Yeah.
And also interrupting the poverty cycle.
Right.
And then also the aid mentality.
Yes.
Of like, okay,
if you can provide for yourself, if you can,
you will cut this off.
Plan your
And the young woman is letting them know, okay, like one hand does not clap itself.
Sure.
So by any means necessary, block whatever the community, your family is saying. Even if you just finish high school, you'll still be able to add to your husband when you guys get together, right? So it was.
So that's tough. Did they run you out of town?
No, they did not, because I use humor.
Oh, of
I
course.
use humor.
Yeah.
The funniest thing is that my cousin was getting married at the time, and
Okay.
we went to their wedding. We brought condoms.
Sure.
And so I would say hello, I would shake their hand. This was BC, before
Yes.
COVID. I would, BC, before
Yeah,
COVID.
yeah.
I would shake somebody's hand and just hand it in their hand and said, in Tumnuara, I would say, take yob yakatate.
Okay.
Take yob yakatate, which means you have to take care of life. Life is taken care of.
Yes.
So, which means your reproductive
Yes.
health, your sexual
Yes.
health, you
Yes.
have to take care of your life.
Sure.
Right? As much as God, the universe, the source,
Yes.
is taking care of it, you also have a
Yes.
so we thought the women were actually going to be a little bit more offended. They were the one that was like, thank you, sis.
Yes.
Thank you. The men were like, I'm like, dude.
They're ready.
Yeah.
They're ready. We're ready. We're
Yeah.
ready to be strong. We're ready to lead. We're ready.
The women were like,
Yeah.
and even now, my girlfriends and I, whenever somebody's going on a trip, we were like, sis, you got your condoms? Just in case, just in case.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Yes.
And making this be a part of a health thing.
And that was exactly what our message was. It's like, you always need them. Just have it.
Just have them.
And just have them. You never know what's going to happen, and there's no stigma in it. It's really exactly protect yourself, protect your life. You don't know what can happen.
You don't know. And within my bigger Ethiopian community, during the lockdown, I started hosting some conversation on Instagram on a page called Shades of Injera.
Okay.
And within Shades of Injera, I started having conversation when the war first started, and I was really sick of just being pigeoned into, oh, you're not Ethiopian enough, you're too dark, the South Sudanese are like, oh, you're trying to be a fake Ethiopian, right? And so I started the conversation, what is an Ethiopian identity? And really talking about this. I talked about colorism, right? In 2009, it was the first time I went back to Ethiopia. None of my family even knew I went back. I just needed to do that healing.
Sure.
I was on a self-discovery journey. Because as an African woman, we leave from being our father's daughter to being our husband's wives to being somebody's mother.
Yep.
I was like, where am I in this process? So I did a self-discovery journey. But when I went to Ethiopia, I went to a beautiful city called Awassa.
Awassa.
Yep, it's 3 hours, maybe 4 hours away from Addis. It's in the southern region.
Okay.
And I was called Baria.
And what is that?
Baria is the equivalent to a nigger, which means slave, because I'm dark skinned. And then people in the city or families have made it almost like us saying nigger, they said baricho.
Okay.
Right? And so I'm over here like, let's dissect this, right?
Sure.
So there was so many people that came. Like, if you're on Instagram, you can go on Shades of Injera and see some of the conversations I've had. And I would just invite people to just come and share.
Yeah.
And then in the mix of deep lockdown, Ethiopians don't talk about sex either.
Right. Yeah.
So they were like, Nyamal will talk about anything and everything. Like, should we ask her to talk about sex? I was like, yeah. So I literally just got on Instagram and be like, where did you learn your sex ed?
Yes, which is a very good question. It's a global question.
Where did you learn your sex ed? People were like, porn.
Yep.
Oh, maybe like a little bit of school. But a lot of people, there was maybe a small percentage that learned it from family members. Okay. From mom and dad.
Sure.
Other than that, it was like cousins, friends, porn, whatever.
Right.
And then we...
A mishmash.
Yes. And then we carried on the conversation of just sexuality in general, right? Then we started talking about like, all right, the funniest thing, because I was like, all right, it needs to be funny too, or what, I need humor in it. I'd be like, so when you're in bed, do you speak your local language? Or you dirty talk in your local language? Like, when you're out here like in Amarnya, do you say abate mano? Who your dad? Sure. Or in Arabic, do you say abuk munu?
Yeah.
Right? And people are like, oh my God, I cannot. You're such, And even in the Amharic language, Amaranya, which is our official language, many, many different languages. Like the word for vagina is ims. Not even many women would say that. They're like,
they wouldn't say the word.
No, but they would call it dabo. Dabo is a bread. It's a form of bread. I was like, why are you calling my body part a bread?
Because it's good to eat.
Yeah. Right? But it is.
put an explicit warning on this episode.
Yes. Oh, but it's part of being an African woman, right?
Yes.
A lot of people are thinking we're our mother's generation.
Sure.
And it's like, no, but our mother's generation, when aunties get together, they be talking.
Yes.
They be talking.
Yes.
It's just they are not podcasting it.
Exactly. Yeah, because there's plenty of it's so funny now because as I'm older and with my cousins, now we start to have these conversations and it's like, oh, they're real conversations, and I would have never thought to have with my cousins really at that time or with my aunties. But it's just like, oh, as you come of age, but we need to be having them earlier.
Yes, earlier.
Particularly with some of my nieces that are having children too many, too young, and so yeah, wow.
I was fortunate enough to have an auntie that invited me into her friend circle at a young age, like in my 20s. Yeah, I heard everything. Yeah. I heard aunties describing their first orgasms and not knowing that it was an orgasm. I was like, oh, poor auntie. But then also trying to find words in our language for them, right?
Okay, exactly.
Because there's a lot of things that we don't have the vocabulary for. Yeah. So there's just phenomenal young men and young women that are trying to advance our language. Nice. And one of them is a dear friend of mine. His name is Bull. Okay. Yeah, he's a phenomenal linguist. He speaks Nuer, Amharic, he speaks Chinese, he speaks Mandarin. No, I think Cantonese, he speaks Mandarin. Okay. And he's just this, oh my gosh, in English, so he's trying to really work on advancing our language and
to find the ways to express ourselves and hopefully get it into the lexicon in some kind of way.
Exactly.
So are you you're still doing live?
I've taken a break a little bit because everybody is not moving themselves away from war. So when I was on there, a lot of people were like, why aren't you talking about the war? But I'm like, when war is happening, life is happening too.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And that's why I'm talking about sex.
Yes, exactly.
Because people are fucking still in the war. Right?
Yeah. Hello.
Okay, babies are being made in war.
Hello. Always.
Okay, so we can't let life not happen because of what is happening.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Life is still taking place.
Yeah.
People are dying. People are being born and all of these things. And that's why I was talking about sex. But then for me, it's like I also needed a break. Yeah. It's like, it's a lot.
Yeah, it is.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's all energy.
It's all energy. It's all energy.
Communicating and all that and just curating those conversations is a bit.
It is. Because sometimes we go for 4 hours. Yeah, hours. Because you just get taken away. Because there's so many people that are thinking the same thing, but are not brave enough.
Sure.
Yeah. Because I was just turn your camera off and just talk to me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's dope. I love it. Yeah. It's like, I just keep thinking it's like the late night radio show.
Yep. Call me now for your free reading, Miss Cleo.
Right. Exactly. So this is a great transition into my next question, which is my mindset hack. So this is where I ask you if your favorite or an innovative mindset hack, one that you can imagine or one that you know of.
So I meditate a lot.
Yes.
Meditation is something that is a practice for me. And for me, every morning when I get up, I'm a plan mommy. I'm a plan mom. And I was actually talking to Asare about this, where I'm just like, oh my gosh. I think the only time I pour libation is when we were in Cape Coast. Right? I haven't been pouring daily libation to really honor my ancestors. Yeah. Those that are loving, because we do have a couple of those that don't love us, but we send them with respect. And we say, keep it moving. But the loving one, really inviting them in just in the guidance that they're guiding me in this journey of my life. Because, sometimes we think, oh, why is this happening to me or this and that? It's like, no, everything is orchestrated.
Exactly.
Everything is orchestrated. Yes. Like we're supposed to meet. We were supposed to meet in the way we're supposed to meet.
Exactly.
And for me and your sister to even, experience Cape Coast together. Right?
Yeah.
So it's just gratitude in the morning. That's my mind hack. I'm in a season of gratitude where I'm just grateful for what is and what to come. I wasn't always like that because I'm a Sagittarius, so I'm often.
Oh, okay. Oh yeah, you just had a birthday.
Yay.
Happy birthday.
I was 35, but I'm 36 now, so I need to find a different way of saying, I was 35. I'm at that age where I could date you and your daddy.
And we'll do it, right?
Yeah, okay. So, come correct.
Yes.
So, gratitude for me, it's my mind hack. And it's something that I had to work for because I used to operate in survival guilt.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I used to really be in survivor guilt. And so for me, shifting from survivor guilt to gratitude.
Yeah, because the guilt, I've seen it in so many people, just the range of different guilt, and it can be devastating to your entire lifestyle and to your person.
It is.
So
it is.
Yeah, kudos to you for the gratitude. Yeah. That's one of my meditations every day as well. Is just grateful for everything. Yeah, yeah.
And it's such a simple but a very hard thing to do. Yeah. What the hell?
Well, I guess you just have to be ready to just let go and just be thankful. So I think that's I want to say probably in the last year, dealing with COVID and dealing with the loss of so many family members in my family, then it's just like, I'm just grateful. And it just helps with the grieving. Like, I see other people who are just locked in the grief. Yeah. And we don't have to be locked in grief that way, because what the truth is that no one ever leaves us.
Okay.
So, yes, no one ever leaves us. So we just need to, as you said, calling on the ancestors, pouring libations, like just being connected to the concept that this energy is always around, and there's guides, and there's something that's wonderful that's coming from all of it. So
when we were touring the castle, our tour guide, I had goosebumps when he kept repeating this at the end. It was like, black energy never dies. I was like, hey, how did he know? Yes. Right? Black energy, right?
Yeah.
And for me, and that's how I've been, I left organized religion several years ago. And so I grew up an Adventist and all of that good stuff, keeping the Sabbath. And I had the white fringed socks and long skirts for my Adventist community out there. Right. Y'all know the struggle. You either had the fringed socks or the stockings, the white stockings. I was like, nah, I'm not going to do the stockings. But I left organized religion, and really, I was having conversation with my late grandmother. She was never baptized, but she knew God. She had conversation with God as well as with our ancestors. And when I bring my foolery to her, she'd be like, you know what? I'm not going to talk to you. Let me go consult God and ancestors. In my language, we call God Kut.
Kut. Okay.
Yeah, and then when you say Kutnyal, you say God of heaven, and then you say Kut Guadong.
God of earth.
No, Kut Guadong is my grandfather's God. Right?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's like God is always up there. So, Kut Ping would be God of earth. Yeah. So God is always in everything that we say.
Yes.
So for me, I was like, okay, if we knew God, we had a word for God. Okay. Right? And so I moved, and then working with the Native American, that's when I learned about, really bringing in the ancestors, honoring them for their strength.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we are here because of them.
Exactly.
Right? And what they have endured.
Sure.
And doing that healing, right? Doing that generational healing, 7th generation back and 7th generation forward. Yeah. So for me, it was just like, this is, like, after learning that concept, I deal with death differently now.
Exactly. Yeah, it takes...
It takes a while.
It does.
Yeah.
But I hope, that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
But it's nice to be at a place where you are able to deal with the cycle of life in a different way. Yeah.
And it's a beautiful cycle.
It really is.
And it's I get it when people are like, and this is something that I've learned here in Ghana, where I saw a lot of posters. This is new to me, right? Where
the chochros.
I'm like, oh my gosh, they have like a whole poster of somebody's funeral or whatever. But being able to see like elders that are like 100 plus in their 90s, where for us as South Sudanese, we don't have that luxury.
Yes.
We don't have. So for me, it was just like, wow.
Yeah.
This is a full cycle of life, right?
Sure.
And so for me, it's like, I get it, like when people die young, but again, I believe in life. You've lived your life purpose. So for us as human beings, and particularly as Black people, because those of us that are from the West, or those of us that live in the U.S., we're operating in a survival mindset. So how do we check that to thriving? Which is something that I found here in Accra. I'm like, I could just be a woman. I don't have to be a tum-tum woman or a black woman. I don't have to be a black woman where I'm representing, I have to represent all of us in spaces and all of these things where, like, I have energy that I can create, right? And all of these things. So for me, it's like finding our purpose at a young age, knowing that, okay, this is my purpose. If my purpose is to, build this house, and after building it, then I transition to the next life, then you fulfill you fulfill your purpose.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so it's really looking at it. I remember I used to have conversation with some elders. There was a sister circle that I used to go to, and one of them recommended a book. I forgot the name of it, but I'll share it with you when I find it. But it's like when you have children already know what their purpose is here. It's asking them, what are you here for? What are you meant to do? That's why when you hear these kids like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor. I'm here to be a doctor. They're here to be healers. So how do you empower them to be healers? Because the only vocabulary they know is a doctor. But there's different ways of being healers.
Oh my gosh. That's so interesting because all my growing up, I was like, oh, I'm going to be a doctor, right? And then I did internships in the hospital. I was like, I don't like the hospital. But I know that I'm a healer. Like I have now, done various different practices, et cetera, et cetera. So I know that I have that in me. So that's a good point.
Children will tell you what they were meant to be on here. It's just that we give them a detour. We give them a detour, right? It's like, okay, what do you want to be?
We systemize them because it seems to work. And,
exactly. So if you're out there and you got kids, ask them what you're meant to be here and help them cultivate that.
Yeah, very early. Exactly. That's awesome. Okay, we have spoken for so long. And so I know this is going to be a two-parter, and I am so happy you were able to give me some of your time.
Thank you so much.
But before we go off for today, I'd like to ask a little bit more about. We've gotten a good sense of who you are outside of the work. But tell us a little bit more. Are you a reader, a watcher, or a listener?
I do all three, honestly.
Okay.
I do all three.
Okay.
I think it depends where I'm at. I think being in Ghana, I would be more of a reader.
Okay.
I would be more of a reader because the time, and for me, a book has to capture me in the first 2 chapters.
Okay. So what are some of your favorite reads?
Oh my God. Oh, Children of Blood and Bone.
Oh yes.
Wow. I savored that book. I savored that book. I savored that book. Oh my gosh. Because I am a big anime fan. So it was like having our own
supernatural.
I was like, oh my God, this is like The Last Airbender, but it's us.
Yeah, exactly.
It's us. And of course, like, one of my most favorite one is Americana.
Okay.
I can remember exactly. I finished it on a weekend. I had Nina Simone in the background, a little bubbly.
Very fitting.
I was like, yes. I was like, oh my gosh. I can't wait for it to be made into a movie and have Lupita Nyong'o play her. Because, us Dutch sisters, us Tum Tum sisters, we need to get love, dog.
Yeah. Okay, those are good ones. We love both of those books. So we'll put those in the show notes. Any last words for our listeners today?
Oh, I have a lot, y'all. Just kidding. No, so for me, it's interesting, right? So in a lot of the presentations that I do, I often, ended with 2 of the African proverbs that I live by in my life, which is, if you think you're too small to make a difference, try sleeping with a mosquito. And I saw that in action. My baby cousin, also our nurse Mana Jock, was her first time going to the region that we went to, and she brought mosquito lotion, mosquito spray, and I was like, Mana, you're a whole woman. How small is a mosquito, right? And for me, I literally was like, yo, that is really
pretty profound.
It's really profound that a mosquito can interrupt us.
Yeah.
Everybody over here now, I'm putting mosquito spray. I'm putting mosquito spray so I don't get malaria and all that stuff. So if they can make that big of a difference in my life,
what can you do?
What can I do?
Yeah.
What can I do? And I think as a collective conscious Africans, not just those of us that are in the continent or that have migrated recently to various parts of the world, but as the collective Black consciousness, it's time for us to think differently. It's time for us to thrive and not survive in these spaces that we are in, and which makes it that, I'm the ancestors. I'm ready to come home to the continent, because I feel like the work
this is where it is
that I'm going to be doing is going to be more impactful here for our people than it is for me trying to undo systems that are not made for us as a people.
And that's work that you have to do here as well.
Exactly.
Just recognizing it, but being in a context that maybe a little bit more navigable makes a difference.
And the other one that I love is, if you want to go alone, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together.
Yes. So together we are here.
Yes.
We hope many, many, many people listen and tune in. And tell us where we could find you on your socials and everything.
Pew, pew, pew. So I
need that thing. I'm like, oh, okay.
Listen, I borrowed this from Lavi Adjei and
Ivan
Orji and Jesus and Jollof. Your blackness is enough. Oh God, they brought me my blackness back, Right. Oh God, yeah. So on Instagram, it's Nyamal_Tutdeal. And on Facebook, it's Nyamal Tutdeal. And on LinkedIn, it's Nyamal Tutdeal.
Okay. Yeah. So everything is your name?
Yep, everything is my name. And then Nya Eden Foundation on LinkedIn and Facebook. So.
And then also Shades of Injera.
Yeah, Shades of Injera, yes. Yeah.
Okay. Lovely. Thank you so much. I wish you safe travels tomorrow, but I look forward to seeing you here soon.
Yes, very soon. In the ways of the ancestors,
Yes.
Well, I must say, I don't know. I know how to say Madase, which is tree, and I know you're from the God Nation. So how do you say thank you in Ga?
Oyuadon. Oyuadon.
Oyuadon.
Yes.
Yes, Oyuadon for your time and this time to share sisterhood.
Yes.
And this conversation. Yes. So Oyuadon.
Okay. We thank you too. All right, listeners, this has been another episode of Glocal Citizens. You can catch us each and every Tuesday with a new episode at www.glocalcitizenspod.com and wherever you get your podcasts. So, as always, please share, subscribe, write us a review, suggest another guest. We love to hear from you. So until next time, listeners, bye for now.